Monster Hunter World is not a stealth game. Or is it? Typically, the only time I engage with this game's stealth mechanics in any capacity is when I need to sharpen my weapon in a bush without getting attacked. When you stop to think about it though, there are so many tools that seem specifically dedicated to a pure stealth build, but surely the devs never intended for anyone to beat the entire game like this, right? Which brings us to our question of the day. Can you beat Monster Hunter World without being spotted by any monsters? Nope. Well, shit, one sec, I gotta consult the flowchart. Let's see here, yeah. Got it. Of course, when I say without being spotted, what I mean is, if at any point during a quest or expedition, a monster engages us in combat, we must immediately leave the quest and start over from the beginning. Whether we've entered combat can be determined by a few definitive signs. The scout flies and minimap will turn red, combat music will play, and we will no longer be able to fast travel. This means we can inflict damage to any monster and even take hits from them so long as the combat flag isn't set. And what I found out is that there are a surprisingly large number of methods to achieve this, with a number of those being arguably the optimal way to fight monsters. With the rules loosely established, it's time to create our thematically relevant character and begin our stealth-only run. After the opening cutscenes, we crash land in the new world and are faced with a slight hiccup. A scripted stealth tutorial where we have to hide from a group of jaggers. The game forces us into combat via cutscene upon entering the area, with no counterplay and no way to circumvent the encounter, which means this run is impossible. Huh. Hold on a sec. Oh, right. If you recall what I said earlier, you'll find that these mandatory combat encounters are neither part of a quest nor an expedition. So, in the interest of making this video longer than 1 minute, the run officially begins when we arrive in Firelink Shrine, Astera, and receive our first quest. Our first errand in the New World is to hunt down the small pack of jaggers that tried to gatekeep our run mere moments ago. Since all we have to do is take out a bunch of small monsters, this should be a cinch, right? Well, given that I've built an audience on a foundation of epic-caricacy, I've got some good news for you all. This rule set makes even the small monster quests difficult. Killing a Jagras in one hit would be ideal, as it would prevent combat from being initiated after the first swing. The main issue here is that they tend to travel in groups, and if one of them sees you, you're done for as they aggro almost instantly. Instead, what we have to do is distract them without drawing attention to ourselves. Seeing as our inventory is currently very limited, we make a quick shopping trip to the Aptonok district to pick up some fresh meat. From there we can grab some sleep herbs to create drugged meat, which when consumed by a monster will put it to sleep. Using our newly acquired Bill Cosby loadout, we lay some bedtime snacks in the bushes and let the Jagras wander over for a nibble. Only one of them gets put to sleep, which is perfectly okay, because as soon as its friends wander off, it won't be waking up ever again. Rinse and repeat for the remaining Jagras. I did try to use poisoned meat, and while it was good for dealing damage, poison unfortunately never finishes the monster off, which means that no matter what, we're gonna have to get our hands dirty. After more attempts than I'd care to admit, we finally end up clearing the easiest main assignment in the entire game. I've gotta say, it's been a while since I've felt such a foreboding sense of dread creeping down my spine. At the very least, the meat strat gives us a pretty consistent means of distracting monsters and dealing damage without being detected. But what if the unthinkable happens, and we face a monster that is herbivorous? Our second assignment has us dealing with a group of Kestodon that fit that exact description. In addition to our inability to distract them with meat, there are no convenient bushes to hide in nearby like there were with the Jagras. The saving grace here is that the Kestodon have a small buffer between when they spot you and when combat is engaged, so we don't have to be quite as careful. But with no way to distract them, it'll be impossible to deal enough damage to stun or kill each individual Kestodon before either they or one of their friends notices us. Luckily, I know just the solution. A while back I made a moderately sus YouTube poll where I asked whether it would be considered murder if you lit a small fire and some animal just happened to walk into it for whatever reason. I asked this because I was labbing a pacifist playthrough of this game and declared that man-made traps like poisoned meat and barrel bombs were off the table. So instead I opted to put torch pods on the ground and have monsters chase me around as they slow cooked over an open flame. An hour into the run, I was watching a great Jagras convulse and puke its guts out all over the floor while it barbecued to death, and I thought to myself, damn, I'm good at this game. But then I figured it probably wouldn't make for a very interesting run, so I ultimately scrapped it. However, I did glean the valuable information that when small monsters see an open flame, they will all crowd around it to scream at it until it goes away, which makes for a perfect distraction. So we fire a torch pod and wait as all the Kestodon focus their attention on it, then we can sneak up from behind and one-shot them with a true charge slash from our greatsword, which is a pretty simple thing to do. as long as mom didn't drop you down the stairs as an infant. In my defense, this is my first time ever using the greatsword, and also the Kestodon kind of shift around awkwardly, resulting in these frustratingly inconsistent hitboxes that make me want to give up on this whole YouTube thing and go outside. But I powered through, because if word got out that I was filtered by fucking Kestodon, I would never live it down. I didn't limit myself to trying the exact same thing over and over. I tried mixing it up a bit with poison smoke bombs, but apparently tossing one of those down, even when hidden, draws aggro from the monster hit by it. I tried using the hammer, a weapon I'm more familiar with, but the results were just as inconsistent as the greatsword. I tried waiting until nighttime, but the Kestodon either only sleep for a few seconds or wake up immediately when we approach them. Eventually we add flash pods into the mix to temporarily blind the monsters, which gives us free reign to do whatever we want to them for a good 20 seconds. This was the moment I realized that if we're going to make any progress in this run, we're going to be spamming the hell out of these things. Keep in mind that at this point in the game, we don't have expeditions unlocked, and until we've completed the Kestodon slaying objective, we can only abandon the quest as opposed to returning from it. The key difference between abandoning and returning is that when abandoning, all of your items are reset back to whatever you had before departing, whereas with returning, you sustain any resources lost or gained during the quest, meaning every time we abandon this Kestodon quest, we have to do another shopping trip for the smoke bombs and flash pods that don't get saved. I did eventually realize there was an optional quest we could return from and use that for item farming, but I didn't find that out until after executing my brilliant plan to cheat the system by waiting 50 minutes and timing out. A couple hours later, with the help of flash pods and simply playing the game better, we're able to finish off all the Kestodon without being spotted. A great Jagras appears and we return from the quest, keeping our progress and letting us plan how to engage our first large monster of the run. How far are we into the video? Oh no. Now's as good a time as any to mention I don't intend to use any weapons from the Defender set since they're way too strong, and I'm also going to abide by the stealth only rule even when farming monsters I've already defeated once. At this point I've only had the chance to smack around small monsters that die in 1 or 2 hits, but what if we have to hit something like a lot of times? Great Jagras has a health pool of 1408, with our Greatsword's Super Mega Turbo Blast hitting for over 15% of that value, which sounds like quite a lot, and to be fair it is, but when you consider that landing this attack requires me to draw the blood of a newborn, you can start to see the problem. Luckily, Great Jagras has a damning weakness that I know exactly how to exploit, and maybe if you're a Monster Hunter veteran, your ears perked up a bit and you're thinking, obviously it's a fire weakness, with his head hit zone having an elemental damage modifier of 0.3 times 1/10 of your weapon's elemental value multiplied by the sharpness bonus. Yeah, okay virgin. While you're out here getting an extra 3 damage per swing on your greatsword, I found the monster's actual weakness: his debilitating eating disorder. We lay down some yummy treats for Great Jagras to find and watch him happily gobble it all down, but what he doesn't realize is that I put a little surprise in that meat. Next thing he remembers is waking up in a field feeling sore. Of course, he builds up an immunity to the sedative the more we use it, so we supplement his diet with a bit of rat poison. Maybe things sound like they're going pretty smoothly, but rest assured I stubbed my toe more than a few times along the way. After about 20 minutes of harassment, Great Jagras gets tired from all the sleep and goes home to sleep. Then a horrifying thought occurs. There's a swarm of small Jagras waiting in that cave, and if even one of them spots me, it's all over. With a flash pod in hand, it's a foot race to capture Great Jagras before he returns to his den. That wasn't so bad at all, and now that we've nailed the basic strategy, all future hunts should be relatively simple. Our next monster is Kuliyaku, who is a little rascal. We'll just handle him the same way we took out Great Jagras. Well, run's dead. With the game-breakingly overpowered slab of meat no longer being an option, we're gonna have to mix it up a bit. It doesn't take much experimentation for me to conclude that flash pods are pretty fucking good. The first use typically blinds a monster for up to 20 seconds, the duration of which we can wail on the thing as it randomly thrashes around, though they do build up a resistance to being blinded. This is where another pair of tools comes in handy: shock traps and pitfall traps. Like the flash pods, they also diminish in efficacy on subsequent uses. To craft them, we'll need to buy some trap tools, but since we're low on funds and grinding at this point in the game is ridiculously tedious, we'll be relying on my favorite anarcho-capitalist in all of gaming: Poogie. Hushaka Poogie, yes you are. Yes you are. Now that I've cultivated an indestructible fraternity with Poogie, it's time to unleash him into the free market. Turns out when you're a precious little bean, theft isn't considered a crime. Where's the equality in this world? Poogie can only find more valuables after we complete another quest, and returning from one early doesn't seem to count. This restriction makes it take much longer than I'd like to become rich, so I'm just gonna take Poogie up to the canteen and see if maybe the chef is looking for an addition to the lunch menu. He knows. Wait, Poogie, no. He knew what I was trying to do. With enough money for some traps, we set out on an expedition for the other necessary materials. Then we set out to take on the big silly bird dude. Spoiler alert for how it went, but Muddy got fucked up real bad. Kuliaku doesn't naturally aggro onto the player unless provoked, so we're free to get up close and personal and wait for the perfect opportunity to unleash an absolute shitstorm on the poor bastard. And after cycling through 3 flash pods, poisoning it, and hitting it with several true charge slashes, we're out of there. With Kuliaku only having 1700 health and the extra poison doing some sizable chip damage, this means the hunt is already more than half over. We restock our flash pods, chase down the bird boy, and wait, did I say half over? Turns out he is already on death's door. All we have to do now is put down a shock trap and capture him. This hunt took less than 8 minutes, with a couple of those minutes being wasted returning to camp. Maybe this run will be easier than I thought. I wrote that line before playing the rest of the run, so I hope it doesn't age horribly. Puke is our next monster and has a fair bit more health than the previous two. Unfortunately, the meat strats won't be of use here, as not only is Puke not a carnivore, it's a vegan. I actually failed this quest a lot of times. Not only is Puke more dangerous than Mr. Bird when it's attacking blindly, it's also harder to knock it into a stagger due to it having more health. This already posed enough of a challenge, but on top of that, sometimes Anjanath would just come out of nowhere and be a bit of an obnoxious prick. All of that is just weak gamer cope though. The truth is, I still had a lot to learn about how my items synergized with each other, and figuring out which actions are safe under which circumstances. Normally, this is the kind of explanation I would briefly gloss over, but at this point I assume most of you are in for the long haul, so I'm just gonna say a bunch of words about miscellaneous monster behaviors. At first, it all seemed a little bit random to me, and I couldn't make heads or tails of why sometimes a monster would spot me right away after being freed from a trap, and other times it would take a few seconds. We can think of blinding a monster as a 3-part act. Firstly, when a monster sees that flashbang pop, it interrupts whatever it was doing and flinches. A particle effect will appear above its head for the duration of its blindness, and it will be unable to spot us or initiate combat, instead opting to throw out attacks at random. When the blindness wears off, the monster isn't able to detect us right away. After whatever action it was performing is finished, its next action will be to shake its head, as is the commonly known cure to blindness. Afterwards, it will be able to spot us again, and when it does, it will engage us in combat. Where this gets a bit fucky is when that head shaking action is interrupted by a different action. This can happen most commonly when the monster gets stuck in a trap or is staggered by a hit after the blindness wears off. I can't exactly speak for what's happening internally in the game's logic, but a good way to think of it is that these instances will effectively overwrite the next action the monster was going to take, skipping its head shaking entirely and letting it spot us as soon as it breaks out of the trap or recovers from being staggered. That sounds like bad news, but it's not completely doomed. This can also work to our advantage, because like I said earlier, when the blindness wears off, the next action will be its head shake, meaning if it gets caught in a trap while blinded and the blindness ends before it escapes, it will still have to do its head shake, giving us a small window to sheath our weapon and prepare our next item. I'm pretty sure this principle applies to every action a monster can take, including actions like being knocked down, but there's probably a few exceptions. While I'm saying a bunch of words about monster detection, I also want to talk about poison smoke bombs. When thrown onto a monster, they'll typically cause it to notice us and engage in combat. However, if the monster is currently blinded or trapped, or in the middle of some other action, it won't draw any attention. Sleeping monsters do not wake up when throwing poison smoke on them, nor do they wake up from the poison damage itself. Last item I want to talk about is the Farcaster, which is functionally an emergency get me the hell out of here button. It's safer, quicker, and easier than opening the map to fast travel, but I have still had some instances where a monster has aggroed onto me mid-Farcaster. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say about the contents of my item pouch. Now you can stop asking me about that bulge in my pocket. And if I recall correctly, we were in the middle of fighting the vomit monster right before this tangent, so let's get back to that. Though Puke Puke is resistant to poison, it isn't fully immune, so we stack some poison in the middle of the usual combo. Typically we'll flash once, hit a true charge slash or two, smoke bomb to hide, then flash again. As the flashes become less effective, we start trapping monsters at the end of their blindness to extend it. It's not all backshots and bubblegum though, as I was still learning the limitations of all my items and getting accustomed to using them sequentially. Rest assured, Puke did get the better of me more than a few times. Dying of poison doesn't count as being seen. Only an hour and a half later, we get our perfect run and slaughter the obnoxious little puke sprayer. I say only an hour and a half as if that isn't an exorbitant amount of time spent on the third easiest monster in the game, because this run is about 70 hours in length and I don't recall winning very often. For our next target, we're shipped off to the Wildspire Waste for an exhilarating escort mission. The escort portion makes us distract a Rathian, which thankfully doesn't require us to actually confront it. Those of you who have played Monster Hunter World may already know what comes next and have had a burning question in the back of your mind. How is this challenge possible when there are quests in the game that force you into combat via cutscenes? The answer may shock you. It isn't, at least not on our first attempt. We're forced into combat when the cutscene ends, and as per our rule set, fail the quest and have to retire. However, these cutscenes only play once. On subsequent attempts, we're free to engage the monster on our own terms. So far, we've fought 5 different types of monsters, including small ones. Of them, only 2 were willing to try my special home-cooked meals. Here's a little guessing game that the audience can play at home. Out of the 25 assignments we're required to do in the story, how many of those focus on a target monster that actually eats the meat we use as bait? Go ahead and pause if you want to look up all the main quests. I can almost guarantee the only way you'd guess correctly is by pure coincidence. So to answer the carnivore or not question in Baroth's case, it turns out he eats rocks. Thankfully, he's not a difficult fight either way, bar some annoying weapon bounces, and on our second attempt we get his health low enough to capture him. But I made a bit of an oopsie when he went to take a nap. Turns out the entire area where he sleeps, placing down traps is disabled. Realizing my only option was to kill it, I made it inhale some poison smoke, but tragically I took too long and the scenario I feared the most happened. That was like a fucking jump scare, holy shit. The swamp blocking our traps was actually foreshadowing of what was to come, because our next target, Juratotis, lurks almost exclusively inside the water. If that wasn't bad enough, his nest is surrounded by aggressive Gajau which freely roam the area. Not only that, but it seems like no matter how much time passes, Juratotis doesn't get hungry or leave the area until we inflict enough damage on it. Thankfully, Juratotis is a carnivore, and that means we can use our signature sleepy bait to make this hunt simple. Or that would be the case if this random Aptonoth carcass wasn't the only food in the world it cared about. Good lord. Juratotis spends the entire hunt either waltzing around this little landmass near its nest, or traveling to its favorite corpse. And it is aggressive if it spots us for a few seconds, which means we have to be very careful about our positioning. We can trap it during its commute for a chance to deal big damage, but it just takes so damn long. Possibly the worst part about this hunt is that when it's thrashing around, you'll miss the body part you were targeting, making your weapon bounce and interrupting your combo. I started abandoning the quest straight away whenever this happened because the early damage is so important. More than a few times we ended up running out of items mid-hunt. A stark reminder that no matter how much we prepare, it still might not be enough. So I took a quick expedition break to gather more resources, and when I returned I ended up discovering we actually can place traps near Juratotis' nest as long as they're on this little island in the center. But this isn't exactly reliable though, and still requires a lot of precision to lure him into it. Also, just to clear this one up in case anyone's wondering, monsters will not turf war with each other unless both of them are engaged in combat with the player. Even with the extra preparation, this hunt still exhausts our resources very quickly, particularly our flash pods and poison smoke bombs. After the 15-minute mark in one of our hunts, we run out of both of those items and have to scavenge the map for more. I usually don't do this, but this was a particularly good attempt and I didn't want to give up now. Keep in mind that I've been at this monster for about 4 hours, including the gathering breaks. With one final poison proc and a couple of barrel bombs, I see a familiar skull pop up over the monster's map icon. Victory was so close. With just a single shock trap, this could all be over. But there's hardly anywhere to place a trap in his nest, and the Gajao are always watching. Oh, my heart. Oh, my fucking heart, dude. Ooh, I can't take it anymore, man. What's your guys' favorite part of the run so far? Mine was the 40 minutes I spent farming items after Juratotis, and my second favorite part is when I farmed items for 30 minutes before Juratotis, and my third favorite part is when I spent 5 minutes farming items during the Juratotis hunt. At this point in the game, we receive the Ghillie Mantle, a special cloak which prevents us from being spotted by any monster while it's active, or at least it's supposed to. I actually have a lot of words to say about the Ghillie Mantle. Some of them are vital observations, and others are words of pent-up, indignant rage, loosely masquerading as valuable info. Let's start with the more productive ones first. Under normal circumstances, the Ghillie Mantle lasts about 2 minutes and has a 5-minute cooldown. The 2-minute duration can be cut short by certain actions, such as swinging a weapon or receiving most knockback, usually. Sorry, I can't maintain this facade that there's any sort of logical, categorical way of distinguishing what will or will not terminate the effects of the ghillie suit. Instead, what I'll do is rapid-fire a list of things that sound like they might disrupt camouflage, and give you a second to pause and guess whether or not they actually do. Throwing poison smoke bombs onto a monster. Directly shooting a monster with slinger ammo. Standing in lava or acid. Firing the clutch claw without hitting anything. Having a monster detonate a barrel bomb in a separate area of the map. Detonating a barrel bomb that doesn't deal damage to anything. Ensnaring a monster in a trap. Taking non-knockback damage from monsters. Getting blown up by a nitro toad. Fucking dying. Getting hit by a lava geyser. Getting hit by falling boulders. And lastly, receiving knockback from a monster will typically knock you out of ghillie, unless that knockback came from a flying wyvern which is currently fleeing the area, and possibly by some other means that I haven't discovered yet. Cool, so now that we all fully understand how the Ghillie Mantle works, it shouldn't be too hard to avoid actions that remove our camouflage. Except, oh, what's that? You expected the game to be programmed correctly? Well, too bad, motherfucker, because I've got one final brain destroyer headed your way. Did you know that monsters can still engage you in combat, even when you're concealed by the mantle? There's 2 ways it happened to me personally, and these instances didn't just happen once either. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as we still have a couple more quests to get through before I can get into the details. So, Toby Kadachi was pretty easy. Next. Anjanath is a carnivore that actually eats bait. Holy shit, I'm about to bust! Zora Magdaros. Alright, I'm just gonna come out and say it. This one's impossible. The moment you land into the quest, you're forced into combat with no counterplay, and even donning the Ghillie Mantle grants no reprieve. So I guess that's that, it can't be done after all. And joke's on that one guy who commented on my last video that all the fakeouts where I pretend to give up are predictable and cringe, because this one's real, so get fucking owned, idiot. I'm not super torn up about the fact that the quest that has speedrunners AFK for 10 whole minutes is unengaging and pointless in just about every challenge run it's a part of, but I didn't want to phone it in completely, so as a compromise I came up with the idea that in order to call this quest a success, we have to repel Nergigante without it spotting us. Keep in mind that to even attempt this, we have to wait through about 10 minutes of fun and interactive gameplay, then quickly don the Ghillie Mantle right as the captain announces its arrival. Nergigante has hitboxes on most parts of its body when it's moving around, so I ended up losing my Ghillie Mantle almost right away, but managed to flash and poison it before it saw me. From there, we whittle it down with whatever safe hits we can manage, and once a damage threshold is met, a cutscene plays and the quest ends. Not only did I do this on my first try, but the cherry on top was the discovery that if Nergigante is blinded when the hunt ends, the effect particles persist throughout the cutscene, which I thought was hilarious because it means that canonically, Nergigante didn't spot us even in the cutscene. With this, we unlock the Coral Highlands region. This region has a fun little mushroom growing in it called Devil's Blight, which is an ingredient to craft the barrel bombs that don't suck complete doo-doo ass crack. I did struggle to use the Mega Barrel Bombs effectively at first and mostly relegated them to wake up damage against sleeping monsters, but as the run progressed I found out just how effective and versatile they can be. Against our next target, Palumu, I believed myself to have reached enlightenment by using the residual damage from torch pods to exploit its fire weakness under the safety of the Ghillie Mantle, but I just kept getting screwed over for seemingly no reason and gave up using them for the remainder of the run. Palumu admittedly gave me more trouble than it probably should have, but thanks to that I learned a valuable lesson about flying wyverns. Their flight path throughout the map is generally a predictable pattern, and if we can beat them to their destination, there's time to set up barrel bombs where they intend to land, knock them out of the sky with a flash pod, then detonate the bombs for some very safe and consistent damage. This is the moment I found out that blowing up barrels removes your Ghillie Mantle, by the way. I almost threw it all away. I spend the rest of the hunt harassing Palumu with poison smoke bombs and blowing it up while it sleeps, and eventually it just gets tired and gives up, which makes this mission accomplished in a nice clean 35 minutes. And that was just for the winning attempt. Next up is Rodobon the Hedgehog. This fight gave me a bit of a scare when I saw how terrible flash pods were against him, but after a few attempts I adapted and started blockading his route with bombs like I was fucking Wile E. Coyote trying to catch the Roadrunner. Also, it's weak to poison, so that's basically curtains for Mr. Bonewheel. Looks like from now on the only place he'll be rolling is his grave. That line probably would have been cooler if I actually killed him. After capturing Rodobon, our next target is the same Rodobon, but this time in a tiny arena. I've never really used a sleep weapon in this game and thought it might come in handy for this run, so I farmed Rodobon for the materials to make one. The special arena quests are pretty interesting because once you go in, you're trapped with the monster inside a tiny room without the option to fast travel out. This makes resource management far more important, and the handicap of not having a bottomless item supply is offset by all the traps and armaments littered about, which let us deal insane damage to the monster. It only took a couple attempts, and I wasted about 5 minutes more than I needed to because I didn't notice that the monster was already limping since it barely moved. And now that I own a weapon capable of inflicting sleep, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the rest of this run. You're gonna see a new era of me going hyper offense on some of these monsters because the more I hit them with my sleep weapon, the more they go asleep. So hopefully that converts to like faster hunts and cooler gameplay. Sleep damage is worthless and I never slept a single monster. I considered switching to a bowgun with sleep ammo, but was instantly deterred by the idea of spending even more time gathering items between hunts. Our next target, Legiana, is a bit of an asshole since it constantly flies to its perch at the top of the map before slowly traveling all the way back down. But what seemed like an obnoxious chase at first turned into an opportunity to exploit its pathing. It always lands in the same few places, so I took the liberty of setting up bombs wherever it went in advance. I'm watching the footage back as I write this, and I'm realizing that despite it happening to me against every monster in the game, I've yet to mention the sensation of unadulterated cuckoldry that comes with missing a true charge slash on a monster right as it breaks free from a trap. Anyways, I went to take a leak mid-attempt, and when I came back, Legiana was one hit away from limping, so GG piss stiff, I guess. It's time. He's here. Seeing as Adogeron is a rotten flesh enjoyer, I propose a time-tested ultimatum to him. Would you rather inhale 500,000 poison smoke bombs, or take the dinner with Meaty Jesus? Now, me personally, I'd say you gotta take the 500k, but what does Adogeron think? Oh, I forgot! Adogeron is super the most meat-hungry animal in this game. I could definitely be luring it with meat. I hella forgot about that, because every other monster that eats meat for some reason just has a pre-designated carcass that they'll never give up. But if I leave this here, then he might just come back. Seems like we have our answer. By the way, so far Anjanath is the only other monster to take the dinner ever since I started that carnivore not guessing game earlier. What a cool and worthwhile game mechanic. At least we've always got Roadrunner strats to fall back on. Some astute observers may notice I have a hammer. This was exclusively so I could do the funny spin move on the slope here.
Okay, let's kill him. Let's kill this guy. Let's beat him to death with hammers.
Adogeron is highly resistant to blindness and poison, and it felt like he even broke out of traps faster. In desperate times such as these, I do resort to just harassing the thing with explosives as it goes about its daily commute. Which would be pretty straightforward if the Gyros here weren't working overtime on patrol duty to ensure I wasted as much time as possible. Huh? It took over 2 hours of attempts, but eventually Adogeron falls asleep, and I'm here to make sure he stays asleep. And now we move on to our final 2 hunts of low rank, Rathalos and Diablos. We can tackle them in any order, so I opt to fight Rathalos first. At the start of the hunt, he's perched up at the top of the ancient tree. And when I say perched, dear viewer, take note of the way it's sitting right now. While he's sitting like this, he won't react to any poison smoke bombs we throw at him, kinda like if he were asleep. He will still react to more direct damage like barrel bombs though. This state, which I will henceforth refer to as perching, is actually something that quite a few monsters do and will become very relevant later. It's just that this is the first time I happen to notice it. While Rathalos is up here, we take the opportunity to do our usual Flash Pod Greatsword DPS spam to chunk off as much of its health early on as possible. This quest becomes a massive pain in the ass later when Rathalos starts mingling with random Jagras, so this early damage is pretty important. In hindsight, I should have invested in the windproof skill here because seeing your hunter flinch whenever Rathalos flaps his wings is such a pathetic feeling. I'm so pissed off that I keep bringing drugged meat to hunts and shit like this happens where the monster, when hungry, is programmed to fly away and kill an Aptonoth for food, despite the fact that I placed raw meat that I harvested from an Aptonoth directly in front of it. I had to play so damn patiently to avoid engaging Rathalos anywhere that another monster might spot me, but at the end of the day it is a flying wyvern, so once I learned its pathing, it was pretty much Barrel Bomb City from there. All in all, Rathalos took about 2 hours to beat, and I mentally prepped myself for all future hunts to take about this long or longer as we move into high rank. Before fighting Diablos, I do a quick optional Rathian quest to unlock more botanical research items so that item farming drives me slightly less insane in the coming hours. And now we have the last hunt of low rank, Big D himself. The D stands for don't stand in the same area as him or he'll spot you instantly. Or maybe it stands for don't rely on flash pods because they suck against him. This hunt, like so many others, does devolve into harassing the monster with poison under Ghillie Mantle and bombing him when it's safe and farcastering out of there. I almost feel bad for the poor dude. I mean, look at him. He's at least 90% certain he's being gang-stalked by a man and his sentient cat, but nobody will believe him. I guess saying that I only used barrel bombs and poison is a tad reductive, because I did style on him a little bit with the Clutch Claw. Surprisingly, Diablos only took me half as long as Rathalos. As we cross the threshold from low rank to high rank, we're forced to take on Zora Magdaros one more time. Same rules apply as last time. I would skip over this one completely, but we end up getting spotted by Nergigante about 10 minutes into the quest, which was enough to strike genuine fear into my heart. Fear which was immediately assuaged when I died to some spicy orange juice and watched from the sidelines as Zora Magdaros clutched up a 1v1. So much for Nergigante being its natural predator. With that, we're now in high rank, which means after long last, we finally finished the easy half of the game. For our first high rank hunt, we have a rematch against Puke. Well, at first glance, it might seem like there's nothing but agony awaiting me since all the monsters have insane health pools and I'm developing back problems and losing touch with the people I love most. There is a silver lining, and that is that in high rank, monsters take increased damage from poison and barrel bombs. Remember that perching thing Rathalos did? Well, Puke has one too. He can only do it in this specific spot, and whenever he does it, we're free to poison and bomb him and maybe even follow up with a flash pod as long as the nearby Rathian minds its own business for once. I don't really know why, but this Puke wouldn't stop giving me the skeptic stare, like it couldn't believe that I was on God murdering it right now. What a relief it was to finally see those eyes close. This hunt took less time than our first Puke hunt. Sometimes when difficulty ramps up, it just feels like I'm constantly getting worse at the game, so it's nice to see evidence that I've actually improved since the start. And then, I shit you not, I spent 1 full hour running expeditions and gathering stuff. The assignment we have to do next is another Anjanath, and I find it hilarious that so far we've fought 4 monsters that will eat drugged meat, and half of them are Anjanath. Except, I don't know if that's true. I put down several slabs of drugged meat throughout my attempt here, but not once did Anjanath get hungry enough to eat anything. However, since the first one did, I'm gonna chalk this one up as a yes. Probably. Anyways, I first tried this fight. A hunt I did not first try was Pinkrathian. Interestingly, this is one of the few monsters that starts the hunt on high alert, meaning we're forced to approach it with Ghillie Mantle equipped lest it target us instantly. Pinkrathian is like if you took the hardest part about every other flying wyvern and made it so all your attacks bounce off of it. And it deals enough damage that sometimes I was just getting the shit murdered out of me when I wasn't expecting it, though admittedly my build was specialized more towards helpful skills than high defense value. My strategy for Pinkrathian was to start by luring her into a nearby sleep toad, letting us get a free double damage wake up hit that I messed up about half the time. What's even worse than Pinkrathian just being plain old pain in the ass difficult was the fact that at certain points, it would just straight up cheat, and that demoralized the shit out of me. Huh? He's literally still fucking blind right now. It's like I spent 100 fucking hours of this run establishing in great detail what the rules were. And now that all goes out the fucking window. For what? When I finally do get an attempt where I don't screw it all up, this fight is arguably one of the easier flying wyverns, given that we can put it to sleep twice with sleep toads. Okay, let me out. Holy shit, look, he's almost dead. I've actually almost done it. No. Okay, maybe? Oh, thank God. With Pinkrathian down, we unlock the final locale in the game, the Elder's Recess. And yes, when doing the mandatory expedition there, I did have to quit out after every cutscene. All of this has been building up to a climactic battle against the guy from the box art himself. So far the game has tickled our balls a bit with what a fight against him would look like, but now we're in for the real deal. Nergigante is an Elder Dragon, which means he can't get caught by traps, and that he has a moveset that puts him clear across the arena every time he attacks. I tried blinding him a few times and getting some hits in, but I just couldn't do it. If we were going to take down Nergigante, we would need to bring out our absolute smelliest cheese. Studying its movements a bit, I found what looked like a perching state similar to what we've seen before, but it's unfortunately a bit different because he still reacts to poison smoke. Him sitting still for a good dozen seconds is really all we need though. We hide in the nearby tall grass, wait for him to move to a convenient location, run up behind him and blow his back out. Like with barrel bombs, I mean. And then we just do that about 12 more times. If that sounds really easy, it kind of is, but figuring out that such easy cheese was available did take a long time. And sure, poison and bombs made up most of the damage, but don't forget that time we followed him with the Ghillie Mantle and dropped some big crystals on his head, and still fumbled the bag right at the end of the quest. The Elder Dragons mark a very significant downturn in the fun factor of this challenge, as you'll soon see. The inability to trap them makes blinding and hitting them a bunch with the big funny sword completely unviable. However, I still tried to make something work, and if I can't get respect for what I was cooking, I hope I at least get recognition for how I cooked it. After beating Nergigante, I replayed the quest and watched him preen his wings until enough materials fell off his body to let us craft one of his armor pieces, and these glasses. Don't laugh, they're prescription. At the end of it, I had this gear and these skills, which are on screen now for any nerds that want to see. This build is all sorts of messed up in hindsight, considering that in all my winning attempts for the remainder of the run, I don't attack a single monster with any weapon. Yet, I got the idea in my head that I wanted to pivot into a sleep build, which required drops from high-rank Paolumu and Radabon, neither of which I had hunted before. I'm actually kind of proud of the solution I came up with for this. Instead of hunting them each individually, I'd instead accept quests that featured several targets at once to significantly lower their max health. I'd capture them, then return from the quest, keeping only the rewards from the captured monster. I got pretty lucky with some of the drops and only had to hunt each of them once. As a reward, we now wield these squishmallow pillows you see moments before realizing you've made a horrible mistake. And for the sake of my mental health, I'm glad it didn't take too long because, to quote a very unwise man, sleep damage is worthless and I never slept a single monster. Debatably, I shouldn't have thrown in the towel on the whole sleep gimmick merely because it happened to be ineffective versus the Elder Dragon with the highest sleep buildup resistance of them all. But man, Teostra took me a really long time, but that's only because I hadn't yet realized the strat. You guys like when I talk about perching? That's good. I'm glad. Teostra perches. Look at him perch. Look at him ignore poison smoke bombs. Wow. He gets all sleepy, but then he's wide awake again because he suddenly remembers sleeping is against the rules. Until he sleeps forever. Kushala Deora is another dragon of the Elder variety that they put in this game. Oh, what's that thing it's doing? Does anyone know what that's called? Valhazak got a really nasty sunburn and its skin is still peeling. I knew this one was going to be the hardest of the 4 Elder Dragons, but I got the right answer from the wrong formula because I made that assumption solely based on it resisting poison. For all the other Elder Dragons, the locale is completely devoid of any other monsters for the entire hunt, but for Valhazak, there are multiple groups of effluvium-covered small monsters roaming about, and some of them can even spot me from about as far away as I can spot them. Valhazak itself, however, doesn't attack when he spots us, and the small monsters never follow him out of their designated zones. This means we can simply walk in front of him, place bombs, shoot them, farcast a route, and repeat until a smooth consistency is reached. Contrary to the other Elder Dragons when they reach low health, Valhazak doesn't sleep because he is the cousin of Death. And Death is the uncle of however many explosives it took to make him stop moving. Oh shit, we're almost done with this run! If you've gotten to this point in the video, you've either lost consciousness or gained sentience and thought to yourself, okay, this guy talks big, but where's the proof he actually did the things he says he did instead of cheating on the winning attempts and pretending he wasn't spotted? Good question. More info on that at the end of the video. If you couldn't tell, I was running out of steam at an alarming pace, but I can feel my energy returning now that there's finally a light at the end of the tunnel. The only problem is that light is a disgusting fluorescent blue, and its feet are active hitboxes, and the fight takes the entire 50-minute timer to complete. Never mind, I'm depressed again. At this point in the run, I've gotten far enough and sacrificed enough of my lifespan that I feel comfortable releasing this video regardless of the outcome. If that sounds a bit defeatist, then let me set the stage for what exactly makes Xeno'jiiva, the final boss of Monster Hunter World, so discouraging. For starters, the only way to get from camp to Xeno'jiiva is by a hitching post which has us fast travel and drop directly in front of him, and we failed the quest. Okay, not a big deal, we can use the Ghillie Mantle. This works, but when you realize that refilling your items at camp puts the mantle on cooldown, this has some horrific implications. The Ghillie Mantle has a 5-minute cooldown, and with max level Bombardier, which we don't have, and assuming we make it back to camp within 1 minute, which we usually don't, we'll be able to enter Xeno'jiiva's arena about 9 times, and the cumulative damage from poison, barrel bombs, and falling boulder hazards around the arena still don't do enough damage to finish him off. Okay, so there must be other ways to deal damage, right? There is. If you're trying to rack up 60 entire points of damage, you can shoot a slinger's worth of rocks at him, but I crunched the numbers, and mathematically it is slightly less optimal to fire rocks at him than it is to return to camp early and do nothing. But wait, I hear literally nobody say, doesn't poisoning Xeno'jiiva inflict 3,600 damage over 2 minutes? Your math is all wrong. Nay, I say, for it is the wiki that has led you astray. In fact, the wiki is wrong about the poison damage for every monster. At least in high rank it is. I assumed the value represented the poison damage inflicted on master rank monsters since the total I personally counted in high rank was about half the expected amount. But now I don't know what to believe because in Xeno'jiiva's case specifically, the actual amount of damage dealt is a quarter of what the wiki claims. What is accurate though is the fact that the poison duration still lasts the full 2 minutes, which is exactly enough time to make it so that poisoning it twice in one go is impossible. And to all the Flashpod DPS enjoyers, I've got troubling news for you too. He's immune. I brainstormed a couple ways to make this endeavor a little less impossible, but the one that seemed the most promising and required the least grinding was getting our Tool Specialist skill to level 3. This reduces the cooldown of Ghillie Mantle from 5 minutes down to 3.5. This means that, given our previous assumptions, we could enter the arena up to 11 times, making it barely theoretically possible to kill it before the time runs out. Of course, this all assumes near perfect play, which brings me to my next major grievance. In all of my time playing video games, there hasn't been anything I could definitively point to as my least favorite set of feat in gaming until now. Unlike most monsters, Xeno'jiiva is still an actual fight, even if it doesn't know you exist. It takes exactly one stubbed toe for the curtain to drop during any attempt, and I can practically smell the commenters now saying, "Ho, have you tried just not getting hit?" And the answer to that is, yeah. Like most other monsters, Xeno'jiiva will freak out a bit when interacting with poison smoke, except instead of having one reaction, he'll randomly pick from 3 different ones where he either stands up before slamming back down, rears back a bit, or begins a charging attack where he crawls forward. What all of these actions have in common is that no matter which he performs, he'll always turn to face the player first, and all of them can be interrupted non-stop if he touches poison again. This means we can effectively back him into a corner until he's completely trapped by the smoke, which is important for getting him poisoned quickly. Next, we have to lure him under falling boulders in the first phase, and when ready to leave, we place our barrel bombs, bait him into charging into them, and Farcaster out. With only a little bit of leeway, all of this has to be completed in about a minute, or we'll time out of the quest, which actually did happen to me. Please. 30 seconds. I fucked up bad. Please. By the way, since I failed the quest instead of abandoning, I did have to farm items again. This time pressure led me to make small mistakes on some attempts that resulted in an instant loss, with some losses even occurring as late as 40 minutes in. I wish this fight was impossible, if for no other reason than to give me an excuse to stop playing, because the fact that it is possible, and the fact that I knew that as well, made my decision on whether to keep trying so much harder. But I did have to make an executive call, and I concluded that it probably isn't worth it, and I should just upload what I have. Who am I really fooling with all this, though? You already know how it goes. This is just a setup for one of those cringe fakeouts where I pretend to give up, only to end up winning like usual, right? Right? I'm actually so fucking miserable right now. I don't think I could take this anymore. Oh, really? Dude, I don't think I've met a single person who's had fun fighting Xeno'jiiva. This thing fucking blows. How? 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 Stupid bitch! Fucking love this game. Too late to pick like a different niche on YouTube. One more. One more real attempt. You know, I used to like playing video games. What the fuck happened? How did you miss that? Please don't hit me with your fucking floor slappers. Oh! I feel like I already know how this ends, no? Like, I'm just gonna run out of time just on my last run over to Xeno'jiiva. And I'm just gonna go to bed, and I might not wake up. Yeah, how much time? Like, yeah, okay, there we go. I'm gonna have about 90 seconds to go through with all this. Worst case scenario, I just run up and like slap him with my greatsword right at the very end. If I'm out of time. Please. Oh, you're poisoned as fuck. Oh, you're stupid as hell. 40 seconds left. Alright. Come on. Oh wait, I forgot I'm literally that guy. With less than 30 seconds on the clock, we managed to slay Xeno'jiiva and complete every quest in Monster Hunter using only low testosterone stealth gameplay. Honestly, this playstyle was kinda fun up until I had to pay the Elder Dragon tax. I am very much relieved that this run is over, however, I have a proposition for you all, and I'm pretty confident that I won't regret saying this. If this somehow becomes the most liked video on my channel, I will continue this challenge in the Iceborne expansion. But for now, stick around a bit longer, because this video isn't done yet and I've got something cool coming up you won't want to miss. And now a warning to the weak of heart. Avert your eyes now, or behold my true form. So I made a long cut of every successful hunt in this run and linked it in the description if you're interested in seeing exactly how I did things. However, it is a members only video because I've been meaning to give more rewards to my channel members for their support, but also the idea that someone might try to prove I cheated and have to give me money to do so is hilarious. Speaking of rewards, it's time for the first ever members only minigame. If I had to explain what that is in a way that makes sense and gives as little whiplash as possible, I'd probably say that Ladies and gentle gamers, welcome to the Monster Mash. Each channel member has had a champion randomly assigned to them, and now they'll all be crammed into a small arena where they'll beat the shit out of each other in a bloody battle royale. Every match, 5 will enter, and the last one standing will move on to the next round with a special prize in store for the champion. Without further ado, it's time to find out which of these competitors will come out on top in the first match of round 1.
Ready? Go!
And we're off! Now these matchups may look a tad skewed, with some monsters being obviously much stronger than others, but rest assured they've all had their health and damage scaled accordingly to make things a bit more fair. Besides, having some less threatening monsters just gives you an underdog to root for. I'd say the underdog this time around is Beatotis, but I guess we'll have to see. And since it'll probably be a minute before anything dies, let me just skip ahead real quick. We're about to witness our first casualty of the match. Beatotis fans are truly in shambles now, except just kidding, Brute Tigrix actually dies first. What an upset. Though with 6 HP remaining, Beatotis is not long for this world. Which just makes it even more insane that Yeon Garuga fucking artillery strikes Gold Rathian into the 3rd layer of hell, and Ruiner Nergigante soon follows. I unfortunately haven't leveled my Beatotis' affection stat, so it won't be toughing out any hits. Congrats to Lucid Rook and their god-awful affront to nature for making it to the next round. Meet our competitors for the second match of round 1. Since the brackets were uneven, the runner-up from the first match will be filling in here. My boy Beatotis worked hard, okay, he deserves another chance, and it's my show, so I get to make the rules.
Ready? Go!
So last match, some of you may have noticed that when monsters die, they instantly gain rigor mortis instead of falling over. This is because monsters can't actually kill each other. Usually the hunter is supposed to get the last hit and finish them off, so instead I coded a cheat that sets the monster's health to 0 when it would be at 1. This understandably messes with some things in weird ways, but that's what you get for shorting labor costs, you greedy fuck. Anyways, you see the 5 health bars on screen? I used the Smart Hunter widget for this, but for some reason it could only have 3 health bars maxed, so I just cloned the source code and found that making it show 5 was actually pretty simple, as long as looking at this doesn't give you an aneurysm. Want to see something fucked up? Banbaro apparently has a hidden instant kill technique, and combined with the double damage from Nightshade Palumu's sleep effect, Black Diablos just fucking dies. It was at 800 HP like 5 seconds ago. Beatotus and Nightshade also get messed up pretty bad here, so things are looking pretty Beatover. Nightshade Palumu does its thing by stalling out the match as long as possible and spreading sleep mist around non-stop, and unfortunately the next one to go is our boy Beatotus. At least he went out in his sleep. Not too far behind is Banbaro, who also goes gentle into that good night. And now for the 1v1. Palumu against Anjanath, neither monster wanting to take more than a single hit each. Close call for Palumu, but ooh, watch out, here comes the haymaker! It's a clean knockout, and Jolt's Nightshade Palumu moves on to the final round. Nightshade Palumu against Scarred Youngaruga, each the victors in their respective bracket. Time to see which of these wretched creatures will reign supreme. I certainly have my guess, but let's see if you chose wrong.
Ready, go!
Both monsters are starting off at 500 HP this time around. Don't want the fight stretching on too long after all. Youngaruga comes out dick swinging with an aggressive early combo, Nightshade Palumu not even having a chance to move as it starts being bombarded from orbit and subsequently knocked over. And even when it gets back up, the assault just keeps coming. Where is this man's coach? Someone throwing the towel already. I can't watch anymore. At this point it seems like Youngaruga is obviously going to win, but the real question is, will it pull out a completely flawless victory? And with one last volley of fire, it would appear the answer is yes. That was a bit anticlimactic, but I think we all saw this coming, and at least this way I can't be accused of rigging the results for content. Big congratulations to Lucid Rook, who has won the high privilege of having their comment pinned on this video. If they so choose to comment, that is. And thank you to all my members for supporting the channel. Again, I'll be having more of these minigames at the end of future videos, so if you want to be in the next one, make sure you become a channel member. Anyways, that's about it. I'll see you all next time when I stealth-only my way out of federal prison.